All right. Happy Monday and welcome to the Aftermath. I'm your host, Saul G, once again on a Monday evening. I come to you live from Atlanta, Georgia. I'm joined once again, as always, with my boy BJ. He is the Alfred to my Bruce Wayne. What's going on, BJ?
What's up? How you doing?
Man, it's been a rough week, man. But man, made it through. Been a long, rough week, man. But it, like I said, we made it through, man. Came on the other side of it, so it's all good, man. How about you? How things up in Tennessee?
Yeah, it's same old. Working and living.
Working and living. All right. Well, that's cool, man. Have you been you been keeping up with some of the technical happenings that's been going on this week, man? Anything stand out to you this week?
I'm always keeping up. I keep hearing about that the whole Trump-Russia thing, but it's been 2 years, no conclusive evidence. Everything they're getting people on is not nothing to do with Russia.
Right.
And people, and if anybody even speaks to a Russia or reads something in Russian, they getting looked at.
Well, man, I had this little joke, man, and I don't know, man. I got to kind of take it a little lighthearted for right now, because I always said, like, the world, I sometimes kind of wish the world worked the way I wanted it to work, because I made this joke a while back. I thought it was pretty funny. I always said, why is it all about Russia, right? Why was Russia the company that had to be used? There are so many other funnier countries that could have been used in this whole scandal. You understand what I'm saying? Everybody wants to use Russia. Like, Russia isn't funny. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing funny about how they talk about it. Trump was talking to Russians, or his son was talking to Russians, and I'm like, well, let's define what you mean by a Russian. Do you mean Russian, somebody who lives in the country of Russia? You know what I mean? Like, for example, when what was the guy who had the movie? Remember the guy? Oh my goodness, I can't think of his name right now. But he had the movie where he was I think he worked for the CIA, and he not Lyndon. Why am I thinking Lyndon? It's Snowden, right? You remember Edward Snowden?
Yeah. Who played him?
I can see his face. It's the same.
Benedict? Was it Benedict Cumberland?
No, it wasn't Doctor Strange. Come on now. It was a guy who played what's your boy's name?
Thor.
No. Guy, get off the Avengers, man. None of the Avengers played him, man. It was the guy, and this is even probably a more obscure reference, but in the movie Looper with Bruce Willis, he played the younger version of Bruce Willis who was trying to kill older Bruce Willis. I can see his face. I can't think of it right now. You got the internet.
What movie is he playing?
He was in the movie Looper. If you pull up the movie Looper, or if you just Google Snowden, I'm pretty sure we can figure it out. I mean, you know, this is 2018. It's not like you got to wait a long time for information. You know what I mean? So this is the thing right here that I'm thinking about, right? So let's check this out. So I always said, like, you know, then we're going to really get into the specifics of it, but I always said, like, I wish another country had tried to interfere with the election. I wish another country, just so it would have been funnier. You know what I mean? Like, I always said, like, I remember when we had that military operation that kind of went wrong, and I think they said they was in what's the country in Africa? It's it's called Niger.
Oh yeah,
but it's spelled Niger, right? So I would have loved for us to have like if it would have happened there, right? Because just imagine how they would have been talking about this whole thing. Hey, before the election, you know, Jeff Sessions met with a with a nigga official, you know what I'm saying? And then they'd be like, you know, Donald Trump Jr. was meeting with niggas before the election, you know what I'm saying? And we would be talking about, like, you would have CNN and MSNBC talking about nigga collusion. You know what I mean? Like, it would be the funniest thing on earth if they could have made it, you know, the country. I know it's however you want to pronounce it, Niger or Niger or whatever the case may be. But I think it's funny how we have these quote unquote, to me, it's more or less like a conspiracy theory, right? Because the reason why you have to believe it's not necessarily to a conspiracy theory, because we're not going to go that far, because if an investigation finds something, right, then you got to say it was technically a fruitful investigation. You understand what I'm saying? So it's like you got to give it credit to a certain extent, but you can't give it credit for the original purpose of the investigation, right? So right. Situation where, like, if I said, hey, BJ, I'm an FBI person, I believed you killed somebody, and you said nothing, well, shoot, I know I didn't kill nobody, shoot, investigate away. And then all of a sudden they find something, oh, BJ, back in 2012, you didn't claim something on your tax return, so boom, tax evasion. And you're like, why are you trying to, but I thought you wanted me for murder. Why would you, yeah, like, you see what I'm saying? It's kind of like you said it was about one thing, and then you kind of flipped it and said, well, we'll start investigating everything, which is fine, because I'm going to start from the very beginning of where this thing started, where it is now, and all the kind of sort of happenings. Because I think a lot of people don't really even understand when the TV tells them something, right? You have to go back and you have to look at it. Because like I said, I'm going to be reading indictments. I'm not reading Fox News. I'm not reading CNN. I'm not reading MSNBC. I'm not doing any of that. I'm giving you the actual indictment. Then from the indictment that was charged, I'm going to go to the actual legal code to tell you what it is, because eventually we're going to end up to Michael Cohen. But I think you need to have a full understanding of what this investigation has been from the beginning, and even as far back as you believe it started. So I'm gonna ask you the first question, BJ. When do you believe, like, the first happening in this entire investigation started? Like, if you want to say event A was the first kind of sort of thing that happened in this whole investigation, what would you say? What, or you don't have to give me an exact time, but could you give me, this may be a year. What year would you say?
Probably 2016.
So you're saying 2016. Well, I'm just going to tell you that is incorrect. All right. And this is based on the timeline given to us by PolitiFact. And I'm going to, I'm just going to say, this is the source that I'm using for a timeline, okay? I'm only using this as a source. All the things that they say are happening, you can kind of sort of, because they like to put things in quotes, because then when you put things in quotes, you can kind of sort of walk back, you can kind of walk back your statements at a later time. So, it's on my computer would quit acting stupid here, but yeah, because it apparently wants to be stuck. But based on this, as soon as I can get it up there, I'll explain what it was. But it said 2012.
Dang, really?
On this PolitiFact, yes. And
wow.
Correct. 2012. And now it finally wants to move up. Here we go. Come on. See, I really need to talk to somebody at Comcast, because this AT&T is the worst. And yeah, I'm sorry. And then I need to find out about that AT&T fiber, because this is just terrible. All right, but here we go. This is based on PolitiFact. I'm sorry, I take that back. It wasn't 2012. It was 2014, spring of 2014. So long before anybody was supposedly planning on running for president, right? So basically, in spring 2014, it says a Kremlin-linked company that engages in influence operation known as the IRA, or the Internet Research Agency, devised a strategy to interfere with the 2016 U.S. presidential election. Its goal was to spread distrust towards candidates and the American political system. Okay, so I'm gonna break that down right there. What does that mean? If you take a step back and you think about it, and we know what happens during elections, we know what happens anytime there's an election cycle, we have what we call opposition research, right? Which basically means you want to go out and try to find as much information, negative information about your opponent as possible, right? I remember back, during the governor's race here in Georgia, it was negative ads coming out saying, Stacey Abrams owed $200 and some $1,000 in back taxes. That's negative research, right? That's something that you're using to spread distrust about Stacey Abrams, because maybe you'll see the ad that says Stacey Abrams owes back taxes. I'm not going to vote for her because of that, right? Because it's not like you just see positive ads, does that make sense?
Yeah.
When you see all these negative ads, you get the guy come out with the scary voice. In 2012, in 2012, Governor-elect, whatever his name is, Brian Kemp, allowed 3,000 massage therapists to get illegal license. And it's like, you're sitting there thinking to yourself, like, come on now, this doesn't even, like, to me, it doesn't, it's all the same thing, because we're all talking about the same thing. When people run for office, the person who they're running against, their people put out ads. It's just the same thing that's been going on and on and on and on. Going back to the election. I remember the ads remember the Hillary Clinton ad showing a little boy watching Donald Trump curse on TV. It's the same thing. You're giving information out that is used to try to develop distrust in candidates. And also you're trying to, when they talk about influence in election, that's what an ad is. If I release an ad saying I'm running for Senate, and, I go around and I say, hey, look, this is my plan. This is what I'm going to do. Am I not trying to influence an election? If I get Barack Obama and Jay-Z and Oprah to come down and tell people to vote for me, am I not trying to influence people to vote for me? Am I not trying to influence an election? Now, what people will say is, well, we're talking about private individuals, right? We're not talking about an entire government. And once again, I would tend to agree with that statement to a certain extent, because you have to say, what was the effect of this on the campaign, right? So let's just kind of go down. a little bit here, right? And we're going to skip down to July 2015. And it says, hackers supported by the Russian government penetrate the DNC network, stealing large volumes of data and maintaining access for about a year, right? In mid-2015, thousands of Kremlin-based social media accounts began to spread propaganda and disinformation, establishing a clear preference for Trump. I think that statement's kind of biased, but we'll go with it. So basically what's happening is over Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, you have these accounts starting to be created. And they're basically putting out false information, apparently. And apparently they favor Donald Trump as their candidate. All right. January 2016, it says Michael Cohen emails the Russian president's press secretary about plans to build a Trump Tower in Moscow. And then it says later he would lie to Congress about the deal. He basically said that the deal ended when this article was written. And I think this article was written in somewhere in August 2018. But in fact, he said the project lasted until June 2016. So right here's another thing that a lot of people like to point to. They're basically saying that when you want to start talking about collusion, basically Trump would lift sanctions and he would do all these different things because he wanted to build, a Trump Tower building in Russia, okay? So number one, we have to sit back and we have to analyze this. Is it illegal to build a building in a foreign country? The answer to the question is obviously no. He has a Trump Tower in the Philippines. He has a Trump Tower in Turkey. And I believe he has one in Panama. So he's already built 3 Trump Towers in foreign countries. So right here, you got to look at it like this Michael Cohen. He lied to Congress. Now, a lot of people want to try to, we'll get to Michael Cohen later, but if you start to look at the timeline, you have to be able to understand what's going on, okay? So then we get to March 19th, and that was the whole John Podesta thing because apparently he fell victim to a phishing scam, all right? And that's where his emails got out. Now the thing about this is, yes, of course, we all believe in the security of our information. We feel those things should be protected. So when the Podesta emails were made public, they weren't fake. You understand? Does that make you understand what I'm saying, BJ? Like they weren't fake. They were stolen. Don't get me wrong, but it's almost like if somebody aired your dirty laundry that you didn't want somebody to get, right? Because that's the biggest thing that everybody wants to talk about, having transparency, right? So basically, what happened was they got his emails, and when they got his emails, they leaked them. So that puts us at about March of the 2016, right before like the final election cycle. I'm gonna skip over some of this stuff because basically it's talking about, George Papadopoulos, where he met a London-based professor who supposedly had information on Hillary Clinton, or he had links to Russian officials. Okay, so we're gonna scroll on down here, and some of these names. This one is June 3rd. It says Trump Jr. receives an email from Rob Goldstone, a business associate. He told Trump that Moscow supports his father's candidacy and says he has a connection to a Russian government official with incriminating evidence against Hillary Clinton. And then he said, if it's what you say, I love it. And that's basically the end of it. There was no information given to them. They didn't pay for anything. Once again, I have to look at it. I don't even know if that's illegal or not. If somebody says, hey, look, I have information about candidate X, Y, and Z. If I pay you $50,000 for the information, I'm not quite sure if that's legal or not. It seems like it happens or not. I know, on shows like Ray Donovan and Scandal, it seems to happen all the time, but I guess that's just one way of looking at it, okay? Now, I mean, I'm not saying everything they do on those shows is legal, but I'm just kind of looking like, is that illegal? I don't know. I don't think so. I think it depends on where the money comes from that's being used. Where is the money coming from that's being used for these payments? Okay, so I'm just going to kind of skip ahead and kind of get to the other thing. So basically, I think people need to understand the difference between Russian collusion and quote unquote Russian meddling. All right. So BJ, what I want you to do is go ahead and pull up the one I showed you about the bots. Okay, because this is actually what happened, and this is what we have proved. Basically, what happened during the election, because people need to understand there's a difference between collusion.
They hide behind Twitter.
Wait, hold on. Did you share it yet? Because I don't see it on the screen.
No, it's not shared yet.
Okay, cool. So you got to understand the difference between collusion, and then you got to understand the difference between meddling. What you're about to see is what happened during the election. So when people talk about Russian meddling, you must admit there was quote unquote Russian interference or Russian meddling into the elections. You don't have to, but you have to believe that this aspect of it was true. The point that they want to keep pointing out is the quote unquote the Russian interference. I'm sorry, the collusion part. Collusion is basically means that two people come together to try to accomplish a goal, basically. You know what I'm saying? They're using collusion because it's the new word. They could just say, a Russian partnership is the same thing. But they like using collusion because it tries to make it seem more devious to say the word collusion. You know what I'm saying? Because it sounds worse. If you say, the Russians partner with Donald Trump, then it's a more serious accusation. But we use that word collusion because, like they always say, collusion is not a crime. There's nothing to be convicted of, but they'll try to expand it to like conspiracy, right? So that's where they kind of slide in and kind of throw these different terms in. So what you're about to see now for a little bit is basically, this is what happened. So go ahead and play the tape for me.
They hide behind Twitter hashtags, Facebook ads, and fake news stories. They're the work of bots and trolls. And one of the most skilled countries at deploying them is Russia. So how do these entities actually work to spread disinformation?
Wait, time out. I'm sorry. I cannot let that. That's a false statement. The best trolls are definitely in the United States. I don't care what anybody says, but if you want to talk about professional trolls, we got them in the U.S. So don't try to say Russia is the best at trolling people because everybody knows we got that on lock. But anyway, continue.
This is St. Petersburg-based activist Lyudmila Savchuk. She has tracked disinformation campaigns and even gone undercover to learn how they work. And this is Ben Nemo, a London-based analyst who focuses on information warfare.
The ultimate goal of all this disinformation is trying to influence real people.
Let's define what's what. A bot is short for robot. It's an automated social media account that operates without human intervention.
It's like a plane flying on autopilot. You can try and make an individual tweet look really popular by getting 100,000 bots to retweet it.
During the 2016 presidential election, suspected Russian operators created bots on Twitter to promote hashtags like War Against Democrats. A troll is an actual human being motivated by passion or opinion.
I like how they got the actual
social media posts that push an agenda. In 2015, Savchuk worked undercover for over 2 months at a troll factory in Russia that has gone
troll factory, wow.
And the Internet Research
Agency. Crazy.
Well, that's that Internet Research company I told you about.
Если, допустим, происходит что-то вроде, например, кто-то кого-то стрелял, то эта тема подхватывалась, разносилась.
All right, so you can stop this right here. Okay. So basically what we're talking about is we're talking about social media. That's the other thing you got to understand. We're talking about, it's almost like Allen Iverson, you know what I'm saying? When he said practice, we're talking about practice, right? So when they talk about meddling, it's like you're talking about Twitter. You know what I mean? Not a reputable news source, not even the news, not an online journal, but we're talking about Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Apparently You had these people telling you things, but they weren't real people. They were bots or they were trolls, and they were telling you, "Hey, look, don't vote for Hillary Clinton. Vote for Donald Trump. Don't vote for Hillary because she worships the devil." Oh, for real? Hillary Clinton worships the devil? I guess I can't vote for her. I mean, that's basically what they're trying to say happened. A significant amount to make someone not want to vote the other way. Now, if you think about, I'm just trying to, this is just the one part that I have about this whole thing. I'm not going to say whether or not it affected or not. You can pull that off. Go back and remember candidate Donald Trump. Everybody remembers the infamous bus tape, right? Grab him by the meow meow. You know what I mean? Everybody remembers that. Didn't affect anything, right? Nobody accused. Who released that? Was that TMZ, I think?
I don't know.
I think TMZ might have released it. Nobody accused TMZ of meddling in the election, right? By releasing that undercover whoever, I forget the name of the thing, but whoever released that grab him by the meow meow tape, right? It's damaging. It's a damaging thing. Remember candidate Trump, the woman on the plane who he apparently sexually harassed in 1976 or something like that on the plane. They were just sitting in first class and he just decided, oh, you know what? I'm just gonna grab, I'm just gonna start filling on her and stuff like that. And her story was, yeah, I was cool with all the touching and stuff like that, but when he tried to kiss me, that was too much. You see what I'm saying? Like, he had, how many women did we hear about Donald Trump sexually assaulting during the campaign? It was a lot, right? I'm gonna at least say what, 7, 8 maybe? So if you look at everything that was going on during the campaign, you had the major media, you had the media, you mainstream media, right? They had the grab by the meow meow tape, evening news. You understand what I'm saying? They had all the women being just paraded around, evening news. But once again, the focus of this whole investigation from when it was instituted and all the rest of that, because we haven't seen the FISA warrant. I don't believe you can't look at it because of course you can't look at it. But the whole reason why this thing was supposed to have been started was because they would believe candidate Donald Trump conspired with the Russian government all the way up to the president to steal an election, in an election where every single legal expert, every single intelligence expert has told you that no votes were changed from a perspective of, let's say, if I went in and I voted for Hillary, and when I went in and voted in, a guy hacked the computer. Nope, not Hillary, Trump. Every single person told us that our election integrity was intact. You can even go back to Barack Obama. I didn't pull the video, but you can pull it on your own time. He said, this election, the integrity of this election is sound. You have nothing to worry about as American people. This is a safe election. This is when Donald Trump, they asked him, will you respect the results of the election? He was like, I don't know. It depends. Because at that point, I think he thought he was going to lose. So Barack Obama decided to come out and basically say, hey, look, the elections are fine. There's nothing to see here. Everything's fine. Nothing to worry about, right? And then as soon as he lost, that's when, because the thing about it is we have evidence that we know Obama supposedly knew about this stuff back in August. That's when he started the investigation, right? Because that's the reason why the investigation was opened up to begin with, because apparently Barack Obama knew about it. So you just got to sit back and take a second to think about that. If Barack Obama started because he said, okay, I believe Trump is doing something fishy here, right? So he opens an investigation. He comes out maybe a couple of weeks before the election and says, our election systems are fine. You have nothing to worry about. Basically, respect the results of the election. It's going to be legit. Everything happens. As soon as he loses, as soon as Hillary Clinton loses, then look at the reaction. That's when he expelled the Russian diplomats. That's when he talked about, cut it out. That's when he talked, all the different things that came after that. But why at that point in time did he not say anything about if the Russian meddling interference was so powerful? Why before the election did he not even throw it out there and say, well, you know, we've got some security things that we're handling right now. So that way we can go back and we can almost leave a bookmark and say, well, you know, Obama did say something about something, you know, he said something about we had some security threats or something like that, spreading disinformation. But, you know, hey, just don't listen to what you read on social media, you know, do your own research, blah, 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 and vote for the best candidate. He didn't do anything like that. So that's the reason why a lot of people, especially people on the right, find this whole situation hard to believe. All right. So you have to basically, the way I look at the Russian, everything dealing with Russia is basically this. If you don't like them, you're more inclined to believe that Russia played a part in the election. But it's like you ask somebody, did you vote for Donald Trump? Well, no, I didn't. What did you vote for? I voted for Hillary. Well, did anything on Twitter and Facebook make you want to change your mind and vote for Donald Trump? No. Okay, but you know, but then they'll say, but I'm not stupid. It only worked for stupid people. You see what I'm saying? It's like one of these like kind of ways you can slide out the back and just basically say, oh, well, if you didn't vote for Hillary, that makes you stupid because you believed all this trolling, right? So that's where you have to start trying to develop your timeline for all the events going on in the Russia investigation. And so then, like I said, because Obama had a reaction after the election was over, right? Because remember, he knew about all this Russian stuff going on before the election. My question is, why didn't he expel the foreign diplomats? Because like I said, let me go back to my timeline, right? So, you know, if I go back to my little timeline here, if you scroll all the way down, if it would, you know, once again, man, this is AT&T at its finest right here. All right, so the election was what? Man, I'm trying. So if I can scroll down a little bit here, because now I want to stop at October 27th. But now, remember the election ended in November 2016. On October 21st, 2016, on October 21st, 2016, so it's 2 weeks before the election, the FBI and the Justice Department, who will still be working under President Obama, obtained a warrant to monitor Carter Page because they believed him to be a Russian spy. Okay. Carter Page had already stepped down outside of the Trump administration in September. So when they decided to go after Carter Page was no longer a part of the Trump campaign at that point. Okay, now let's fast forward to December 29, 2016. Barack Obama expels 35 Russian diplomats, and then he starts issuing new sanctions on Russia. So basically, the day before, like, you know, he only had maybe what, 10 more, you know, about 2 more weeks as president. So at the very end, he decides to take action against Russia. But we've already seen that he knew about this potential Russian conspiracy before, but he waited until after the election was over to actually do something. So if you go down and I'm just gonna keep going down here now. I'm gonna go and basically start talking about how, if you look at how this whole thing is played out, a lot of people want to talk about all the indictments or the people who have been convicted of crimes. And I think the most natural comparison people make is to Richard Nixon. All right. So what I want you to do, BJ, is I want you to do, and a lot of people want to compare this to Watergate. Okay. So I want you to do, BJ, is pull up the video that I posted about, it basically is going to explain Watergate in about 1 minute and 30 seconds, because it can do it a whole lot better than I could. So whenever you get ready, you can just pull that up and you can play that.
Watergate in 1 minute? Are you kidding me? Watergate is a scandal in American history that resulted in the downfall and eventual resignation of Richard Milhous Nixon. Richard Nixon ran for his second term in 1972, and he did not want to lose. He lost in 1960 to JFK. He won in a squeaker in 1968, so 1972 was going to be different. And he had a bunch of people that worked for him, and their nicknames, aptly enough, were the Creeps, the Committee to Re-elect the President. And basically what occurred is, whether Nixon knew in the beginning or not, I don't know, but it was a plan to infiltrate the Democratic offices at the Watergate Hotel, to basically steal their stuff, to find the nitty-gritty, to find the dirt, and to win the election. Unfortunately, the burglars were caught. And even though Nixon trounced in 1972 and won that re-election, it was after that election, through the trials of these burglars, where it became known they were working for the White House. The Watergate scandal is really about a cover-up rather than the actual burglary, and whether or not Nixon was using his powers in the office of the presidency to basically hide this scandal. When it came known that Nixon had recorded many things in the White House, there was a subpoena issued for these tapes. Nixon refused to give those tapes over, claiming executive privilege. This became the trial, Nixon versus United States, where a unanimous court forced him to give those tapes over. And this is the magic words right here: nobody, Mr. President, is above the law and the Constitution. When Nixon had to give those tapes over, he knew the gig was up, so he quit. He got out of town. So there you go, guys. Now you know a little bit about Watergate. Check out a longer video down below to grow your brain 10 times its size, and we'll see you guys next time you press my buttons and we're touching those interviews.
All right, so we can stop sharing that. So, and basically explains what happened in Watergate. Now, a lot of people want to make these type of lateral comparisons from Watergate to the the Russian probe, or whatever the case may be. All right, so let's see if we can make some comparisons. Okay. In 1973, the Attorney General was Elliot Richardson. All right, and Elliot Richardson appointed what's this guy's name? Archibald Cox as a special prosecutor. Okay. Now, a lot of people want to compare Archibald Cox and Robert Mueller because, of course, they were both special counsels that were asked to investigate the president. Okay. Now, what we have to do first is we have to say, do you know, okay, I asked you, BJ, do you know what crime was committed during the Watergate scandal?
Wasn't it illegally obtaining information?
I don't think that was it. I think, well, first of all, the problem is they physically broke into the Democratic National Convention. So I believe a lot of them were charged with breaking and entering. So that's a very important part of this whole entire problem with the comparison, okay? Because when they opened up a special counsel, they actually had, first of all, let's break it down from a most basic point. We had what President Nixon was doing. So you got to think about, this man had all the powers of the executive branch underneath his belt, right? He had all these things versus candidate Trump. So it's a difference there, because the reason why this whole thing went to the level of impeachment, the whole reason why it became such a huge scandal, is because this is something that the president of the United States did as the president. Okay, the problem, or one of my major problems with this whole Russian thing is we're talking about candidate Trump. Okay, so that's a major difference between talking about what a president was doing and then talking about what a candidate was doing, because you got to understand that the powers that they hold are going to be way different. So the first major difference is one was a president, one was a candidate. That's a huge difference. Another major difference was a crime. We got to actually establish a crime that was done. We're talking about Richard Nixon and the White House directed those men to break into the Democratic National Convention in order to try to, get any type of information they could find, right? They wanted to find dirt. They wanted to find any information they could win because, like I said, he wanted to win his re-election bid, right? So he used his power as the president to try to win a re-election bid, okay? Versus, and then, like I said, we're talking about direct, we're also talking about these men admitted the president told me to do this, right? So they admittedly said the White House and the president told them to break into the DNC. So the president directed him to commit a crime, okay? That's number one. Oh, well, number two, I can't remember what number one because this is starting to go to a blur to me. Okay, so those are major differences because when he opened up the special prosecutor, right, it was because there was an actual crime that had been committed. So the special prosecutor was to look into the crime and see if there was a connection between the president. Now I ask you, as far as Russia goes, what's the crime that was committed? Some people will say conspiracy against the United States. That's a tough one to prove because what you're trying to say is this other thing you got to think about it. Would then candidate Trump be powerful enough or hold enough weight where you're basically saying to prove that conspiracy was there, you have to say that candidate Trump was powerful enough to coordinate an entire foreign government, right, to do something and to commit an illegal act. I find that hard to believe.
Also,
go ahead.
There's a lot to pick through on here. Like, how did Russia influence the election? How can you prove that?
Well, so the thing is, go ahead.
And what do the Russians get out of it? And because it's like did they hack the election machines? Are you talking about them going for Trump online? Like it's kind of like a hard thing to get proof on.
Correct. And the thing about it is, and that's why that's the reason why I kind of made the whole country of Niger kind of joke at the beginning, because when we say Russia, right, we're talking about any citizen of that country. They say, because other thing, like I remember we used that term oligarch. Trump Jr. messed with a Russian oligarch. I don't even know what that is. Never heard that term before in a long time. I might have heard it maybe in history class talking about somebody, but I don't remember oligarch, because I remember I want to say there was something called an oligarchy, but I don't remember what that was. You know what I mean? Like if you think about it, they're basically saying anybody who is a citizen of Russia, if they met with him, that's something there. He met with some Russians. Well, were they government officials? You know what I mean? Like if for example, when we know the American government killed Gaddafi, right? Gaddafi and where was he at? Was that I forget where. Well, see, I think he was in Sudan. I might be wrong. Was Gaddafi in Sudan? Anyway, we know that, or we can even go back to Manuel Noriega. So we know the United States government at times has basically taken out, go to Iraq. That's an easy one to remember. We got Saddam Hussein out of there, right? That's interfering with what another government is doing. But somehow it's like we don't see it. You understand what I'm saying? Like we went in and we said, no, Saddam Hussein, we don't like what you're doing in this country. We're going to go to war. We killed him. And we've done the same thing in multiple countries before. The United States has no problem, but we consider Twitter, Instagram bots and trolls like interfering with something. I'm like, don't you think that actually assassinating a foreign leader is a bigger interference or a meddling, if we will, in the foreign affairs than anything you could ever see on Twitter? I think, and that's the reason why you said when you want to talk about it, it's hard to really take it seriously because of we know history and the other things in history that could be could be more serious than some of these other things. That's why when you said, well, what is it? What does Russian meddling look like? That's all it was. We're talking about Facebook accounts, right? It's almost to the situation where can I sue Twitter or can I sue Instagram if I see a young lady on there and she looks good, and I go on Instagram and I'm like, dang, and I'm sending her messages and she's writing me back, and I'm like, shoot, she tell me, hey, I love to meet you, man, but I gotta pay this cell phone bill on my phone. I send her a little money for a cell phone bill, and I go meet her, and then she turns out not to be that person. Can I say that was I don't know female interference? Can I blame all women for what she did to me? You understand what I'm saying? Because this term that we're using with Russia is very loose, because they're like, yeah, he had a meeting with Russia. Like the fact that they even spoke about him wanting to build a Trump Tower in Russia, it kind of tells you like, this is what this guy does. He builds hotels. This is what he does. You know what I mean? Like the fact that you try to make this into a story. So basically, he built a hotel in Manila. He built a hotel in Panama, and because he wanted and he built a hotel in Turkey. And I do believe, I'm not sure, but he got them all built without having to interfere in anybody's election. So why in the Russia case would he need to use, because he's already built it in 3 foreign countries when he wasn't running for president. But also when he's running for president, now he needs a grand conspiracy to try to get a hotel built in a foreign country. Like, you understand what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't make any sense if you take all the things that surround the investigation away. And you sit back and you think about it from a logical standpoint, not from whether or not you like the guy, not from whether or not you want to see him impeached, not from whether or not you support him, whether or not you wear a red hat. It doesn't matter. Back all that stuff away, there's nothing there. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't make any sense. So he can build 3 hotels internationally with no problem. But the 4th one, and let's be honest, compared to the other countries that he was using, Russia is a superpower. You understand what I'm saying? Like, Russia is a huge superpower in this world. And you're trying to tell me that the superpower country was the one that will be trying to work with Donald Trump to steal an election, to do something, because they are the most, compared to the Philippines, compared to Turkey, and compared to Panama. You got Turkey, Panama, Russia, and the Philippines. Which one's the most powerful? Russia. So if all he wanted to do was build a hotel, it doesn't make sense that he would have used the most powerful government, right, that was available to him just for the sake of building a hotel, when the countries that probably might have been more lenient towards maybe trying to do something like that, they didn't require anything like that. So I think we have to start to just kind of think about this thing logically. And then, like I said, I know when I was going back and forth from the Watergate, you have to be able to identify a crime. If you say, I am going to investigate you, if the police right now were monitoring my phone calls and I don't know, watching my house or doing something right now, on that warrant to maybe get a phone, I don't know, I mean, we don't tap phones anymore because this ain't the 90s, but to do whatever type of surveillance they wanted to do, they would have to put on the warrant a crime. I am going to investigate Mr. Graham because I believe he is a drug dealer. I believe he has narcotics in his house. I believe he's a big narco distribution. He blah, blah, blah. You would have to put on the warrant why you're going to investigate. You can't just say, well, that ain't right there. And I just want to see what's going on, because we're constitutionally protected against that. I think it's called what? Unlawful search and seizure, right?
Yep.
You can't just investigate anybody you want to without any particular reason. That's the reason why, when you get pulled over, the police be like, I think you've been drinking. That's their probable cause.
What reason did they have to ransack Trump's lawyer's place?
Well, once again, there you go. So I'm glad you brought the lawyer. I'm going to skip over because we already know the story. We know about the indictments, right? We know about the people who have been accused of something. But first thing, let's talk about the 13 Russians, right, who were indicted. Now, as soon as they were indicted, the American attorneys who were defending them asked for, okay, we want discovery. And basically, discovery is, I ain't no lawyer, so don't try to, if you got some lawyers watching, don't be trying to mess with my whole, I ain't no legal expert. I'm just going to basically say what I think discovery is. Discovery is basically means you have to show me what you have against me. And the Mueller investigation was like, well, we can't show you because it'll interfere with an active investigation. And if I'm not mistaken, to this day, they still have not produced. We don't even know the status of those indictments. They have not produced whatever was supposed to be produced during discovery, because you have to look at it. They can't go back and post-date it, right? So when they had to go apply for the warrants and they had to go have the indictment set, they would have had to have everything in place. So even if they found anything after, they can't go back and predate it. Does that make sense, right?
Yeah.
All right. So we can talk about Manafort real quick. Manafort was convicted of, I believe, bank fraud from 2012. Once again, had nothing to do with the campaign, had nothing to do with Russian collusion, had nothing to do with the initial reason why you told me you conducted this investigation to begin with. Now everybody wants to talk about Michael Cohen. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Michael Cohen was sentenced to 3 years, right? 3? Yeah, I want to say it was 3 years. And he's going to jail in next year. He's going to jail next year. So he's got about, I think, 4 or 5 months where he's still going to be out. And they're saying he's going to continue to work with investigators during this time. And, he'll eventually go to jail. Maybe. I'm still thinking it's up in the air. He might not go to jail. We'll have to wait and see. But let's discuss Michael Cohen real quick kind of here. And I'm going to kind of wrap it up here with the Michael Cohen thing, right? Oh, and my bad. And once again, when people talk about obstruction of justice and they talk about what Trump does, I want to briefly discuss something called the Saturday Night Massacre. Okay, because remember, a lot of people also like to accuse Trump of obstruction of justice, right?
You hear that a lot. He's going to fire Mueller or something like that. They keep saying that.
They keep saying he's going to fire Mueller and all these different things, right? So another thing is they're saying, well, we can't get him for a collusion, we'll get him for obstruction of justice, right? So this is what they have. This is what they're trying to do, because remember, he fired James Comey, right? But I think some intelligence expert came out later, and then they did say that Comey did mishandle the original investigation. I can't remember who that was, but I have to go back and check it. But have you ever heard of the Saturday Night Massacre, BJ?
Yeah, it's where what president was it? Nixon. Nixon. He fired a whole bunch of people who were investigating him and stuff like that.
Correct. This is what happened. Okay, so basically what happened was on the evening of Saturday, October 20th, Nixon ordered Attorney General Elliot Richardson to fire the special prosecutor. Richardson refused and he resigned. Then Nixon ordered Deputy Attorney General William Ruckelshaus to fire Cox. Ruckelshaus refused and he resigned as well. Then he asked who would be the third most senior person at the time, the Solicitor General at the Justice Department, to fire Cox. And this guy's name was Robert Bork. And he was about to resign, but then he did as Nixon asked. So this is basically what happened. And then 11 days later, a new special counsel was appointed 11 days later on November 1st. That's a good day, 1973. And then again on November 14th, 1973. So that, if you want to talk about an obstruction of justice, then I think we can obviously go in that, because Nixon knew he had committed a crime, right? We knew a crime existed. And this is the reason why everybody wants to go ahead and start. I mean, I get all the memes and stuff and everybody wants to have something to talk about, but you got to be honest about this. Nixon knew a crime was committed because he told him to break into the DNC. So a crime was actually committed. And to try to cover up the crime, he basically ordered 3 people in a row from the highest ranking to the Attorney General down to Solicitor General to fire the guy who he was trying to get to investigate him. And then that's when you had the court case, the United States versus Richard Nixon. That's when he had to eventually release those secret recordings, which basically just said, and basically had it where he he was basically telling him and he instructed him what to do. So if you think about that, I think that's obvious. That would be an obstruction charge, right? Like, I think that's pretty obvious to me. Like, that's what obstruction looks like. But if you want to talk about this case, for example, it's completely different. That's why, like, when a lot of people talk about obstruction, I'm like, well, it's not really obstruction, because we know he fired Comey, but he once again, under the circumstances that have been presented, the evidence that has been presented, it's not the same thing. And it's also not like he was like, okay, Jeff Sessions, you need to fire James Comey. And Jeff Sessions said, no. Okay, well, he fired, and then Sessions resigned. And then he went to Rod Rosenstein. He said, okay, well, you fire James Comey. And Rod Rosenstein said, no, I'm not going to do it. And he resigned. Like, this is an actual, like, to me, where an obstruction charge could have been done. But this is the one thing I want everybody to understand. And I think this is the part where people need to just kind of sort of pump the brakes and kind of chill out a little bit. People do realize Richard Nixon never went to jail, right? He resigned, and he basically just went on with his life. They never got Richard Nixon for obstruction of justice. They never got Richard Nixon. He never went to jail for any of this stuff. So when you believe Donald Trump is going to go to jail over this, I think it's very, it's like you're getting your hopes up for nothing, because there's no way that he's going to jail if we actually know an actual crime was committed and that guy didn't go to jail. So lastly, I'm going to talk about Michael Cohen real quick, because I think a lot of people don't understand what he went to jail for. And it's a lot of, not necessarily what he's going to jail for, but there's a lot of things in the Michael Cohen case that are not really as interesting as it seems. Okay, so I just want to remember, Michael Cohen got 3 years. And this is what I want you to understand. I'm just going to read through the counts and the basically the penalties for it. Okay, now it's basically talking about tax offenses, right? So it says counts 1 through 5 charge the defendant with the evasion of personal income tax for 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, and 2016. Counts 1 through 5 each carry a maximum term of imprisonment of 5 years, so that each count can get a maximum of 5 years. A maximum term of supervised release of 3 years, a maximum of $100,000. So that's basically it. Count 6 is about making false statements to a financial institution in connection with a credit decision. Okay. Count 6, listen to this. Count 6 carries a maximum term of 30 years, which I think is ridiculous. So basically, if you lie on a mortgage, you can go to jail for up to 30 years. Like, I guess if you lied about to try to get some sort of funding, right? If you lie on that type of application, that carries a maximum of 30 years. So let's add this up. 5 charges, 5 counts that each carry a maximum of 5 years. Count 6, that carries a maximum of 30 years. So let's just say if you got the max on everything. So let's do that. 5. Let's do 5 times 5. So that's 25. So we're up to 55 years now. Okay. Count 7, willfully causing an unlawful corporate contribution. Okay. So this is the campaign finance part. And it says this one carries a maximum imprisonment of 5 years or a maximum term of supervised release for 3 years. Basically the same thing over again. Okay, so now we're up to 55 years. Count 8 charges them with making an excessive campaign contribution. Okay, count 8 carries a maximum term of 5 years, supervised release. So it says the total maximum term of imprisonment on counts 1 through 8 is 65 years. 65 years, and he got 3. Okay, so. And I think he had to pay a restitution of $1.2 million, if I'm not mistaken. It was around that much. So he had to pay a restitution of over $1 million. But I'm going to get to how much money he basically went through. So it says, in consideration of his plea to the above offenses, the defendant will not be prosecuted any further. All right. For any crimes related to evasion of income taxes, making false statements, causing an unlawful corporate contribution, making false statements to Sterling National Bank, blah, 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 blah. Now, this is the part I want everybody to understand. And this is the reason why, like, regardless of how you want to look at this, to me, this is not what justice looks like. All right. So we already know, I'm not going to get into the whole Stormy Daniels thing, but we basically know what they're talking about. But remember, he was forced to pay back $1.2 million. Okay. Now, let me scroll down here. Now, listen to how much money this guy did not report. He only had to pay back $1.2 million. Count one was 2012. He had $893,000 of unreported income, which he needed to pay $192,000 in taxes. Count two, he had $499,000 unreported income. That's another $300,000 of tax loss. In count three, he didn't report $670,000. That's another $232,000. In 2015, he didn't report $969,000 in income. That's a tax loss of $375,000. And then finally, in 2016, he didn't report $1.1 million, which is a tax loss of $395,000. So if you think about all the money he wasn't reported, I think if you add up all the taxes, it'll get close to about $1.2 million. So I believe that's what they were forcing him to pay back. But if you think about this is what a lot of people want to point to when they say, like, convictions, the Mueller investigation is not a hoax, because this man is going to jail. We believe Paul Manafort is going to jail, but none of these have to do with the original investigation for what the intended purpose was. All right. So it's like we're sitting there and we're talking about collusion, and we're talking about Russia, and we're talking about stealing an election, and we're talking about our democracy was you know, they interfere with our democracy, and they're basically trying to change the American way of life. If you think about all these things that Michael Cohen is being charged with, now we can get into the now this is my thing. And we already established that 65 years was on the table. 65 years. If you remove the campaign finance laws, right? Remove the two charges he got from an excessive campaign contribution, and they were basically dealing with the campaign. So he had 10 out of the 65 possible years he got was related to the campaign. And he only got 3 years. And somehow we're supposed to believe that, you know, the judge was being tough on him. When you look at a 65-year max and you get 3 years for everything that you did, it doesn't make a lot of sense. You see what I'm saying? Like, this is the reason why I'm kind of laughing when I heard he got 3 years. I'm like, well, we don't even know if he's going to get those 3 years, because there could be a situation where, and you have to look at it from a prosecution standpoint, because we're talking about the, I think it's the Southern District of New York. And let's just be honest, the Southern District of New York hates Donald Trump. So if you're facing 65 years, right? Or let's just say before they even put those campaign finance things on there, you're facing 55 years in jail. And I'm just going to ask you, BJ, if I came to you and I'm the district attorney and I said, BJ, it ain't looking good, man. I could get you for 30 years for lying on this mortgage application. But look, I'll be willing to go very lenient. I'll talk to the judge. We'll be willing to go very lenient on sentencing if you just add on these other two crimes. And you'd be like, well, Ain't that gonna make my max bigger? I don't worry about that. We just need to get this on paper. So we already know Michael Cohen lied to Congress. So my thing is, if somebody said, hey, look, you're facing a maximum of 55 for 5 charges. If I add 2 more on, I'll do what I can to make sure you don't serve anything close to that. Would you let him add on the 2 charges?
Yes, I don't even know because the way it always looks, does anybody even go to Congress? Does anybody even go to jail for lying to Congress?
I don't know. I probably have to Google it. I don't know who's. I mean, we know people that have lied to Congress. I mean, Congress. We know that for a fact. But we know, the executive from Google lied when he said that his search engine isn't biased. Remember that?
Yeah.
He lied to Congress because we know it is, but
that feels kind of like a bully tactic in order for somebody to confess. And that's all it feels like, because I don't think anybody goes to jail for that.
Wait, time out. Wait, whoa. Wait, you bring up a good point. When did I read out a account for lying to Congress? Or when did I ever read out any sort of charge for perjury or any sort of a thing where he lied to Congress? Where was he charged for that? I didn't read it out because I only had the 2 campaign finances, and then he had like 6 counts where they were talking about either bank fraud or like not wire fraud, bank fraud or the application. And the way they go back and they use this money is because what he's saying is when he did a fraudulent loan back in 2013 or 12 or so, I don't remember, he created a shell corporation and he got the money to pay Stormy Daniels off with the money he got from the fraudulent. You see what I'm saying? That's what they're trying to say.
Yeah, but why would Trump need to do all that? Trump is rich. He should be able to pay Stormy Daniels and that other lady easily. He doesn't need the campaign finances.
Well, but this is the other thing you got to look at it like this, though. Michael Cohen was his legal team. So we've heard the tape where he says, hey, I'll just pay her in cash. He's like, no, I don't do that. And Michael Cohen is supposed to be the legal expert. So the legal expert, like if my lawyer told me, hey, look, like I told you before, if I ran for it, then they like, look, man, you got this girl, man. She talking about, she gonna expose you, we need to handle this, man. How you want to do it? I'm like, man, shoot, I got money, man. Just pay her, And then my lawyer says, well, instead of just paying her, like from your my personal checking or something like that, we're going to set up a LLC. So then that way, I don't even know what the point of doing that is. I mean, I'm pretty sure he knew. I don't know people say shell corporations. I look at it like he paid it through that corporation or whatever the case may be. I don't know the legality of that. You know what I'm saying? But as my lawyer, I would hope that if I'm asking you to do something, you would be doing something that's not illegal. I mean, that makes sense, right? Like if I was speaking to my accountant and my accountant was like, oh yeah, pay it from this account. Okay, pay it from that account. And somebody comes, oh, Senator Graham, you had a campaign finance violation. What do you mean? Yeah, remember when you paid that from this account? That was the election campaign funds. But my accountant told me to pay it from that. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm trying to get votes. You know what I'm saying? Like I pay them good money to handle that type of stuff. So if my legal team and my financial team are telling me to do something, then isn't that the reason why you pay people money? And Michael Cohen, as you can see, even though he was getting money from that kind of shady taxi company, they don't seem like they're hurting for money, right? So yeah. I'm pretty sure Trump was paying him pretty well. So with all these things going on, it's like, well, let's think about this. He was paid. A lawyer is paid to do what? Give you legal advice. So anytime you take a lawyer, you're paying the lawyer to be the expert because you didn't go to law school. You shouldn't believe your lawyer would have you do something that would be illegal. And if he did, he's not a good lawyer. He needs to be disbarred and everything else. But at the same time, I'm not trying to make excuses for Trump because, hell, he's a multi-billionaire. I'm pretty sure he's had to deal with lawyers before. But at the same time, what is the culpability in this? If my lawyer tells me, shoot, he directed me to do it. He told me this was the way to handle it. I didn't know he was telling me to do something illegal. So that's the way you got to look at it. So when everybody wants to talk about Michael Cohen, go look at the taxi cab company that he ran. Go and look about how he lied on a financial document to get, I want to say it was like I think over $4 million to get financing for this company. And he's been doing some shady things. So when you're just up and ready to believe Michael Cohen, I think it's because you want to. It's not because you believe he's a credible person. Same thing like with Stormy Daniels. It's not because you believe she's credible. It's because you want to believe anything you can that's negative. And we shouldn't do that only to make a point. So that's the reason why, like I said, if you look at everything going on with Michael Cohen, he was facing up to 65 years in jail. He got 3. 3 years for tax evasion for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. I mean, it was 2011, 2012, 5 years. I'm sorry. Tax evasion for 5 years, lying on a mortgage application, which is, I mean, shoot, that's you got to think about somebody in the finance industry got a lot of pull. If the maximum, I mean, that's almost like, well, I think the maximum for rape is less than that. I think the maximum for sexual assault is like 25 years. So you're trying to tell me if you're lying on a mortgage application, it's seen as more serious than sexual assault? Like, I mean, I'm not gonna get into that whole thing, but you understand what I'm saying. This man was facing 65 years and only got 3. And if you listen to the news, they make it seem like the judge was tough on him. If he would have got 1 year for every single charge, he would have been in jail for what? At least 8 years. But he didn't even get a year for each charge. He didn't even get 6 months for each charge. So you can take all the information that you've heard tonight on the show and you can make your own decision about whether or not you want to believe Russia. You can decide whether or not you was all for Hillary Clinton during the election. And all of a sudden, when people on Twitter started these hashtags, stop the Democrats or resist the Democrats, whatever the little stupid hashtag was, and people who are not real from Russia came on there trying to convince people to vote for Donald Trump. If you really feel like that played a big part in the election, then you can continue to believe that. But I think we need to be smarter than that. It has nothing to do with my support or lack of support for the president. It comes to me being just clear-headed and level-headed about this. This is dumb. This is the dumbest thing. Like this just shows me like how dumb the country is right now. Like we are so dumb that we want to believe anything and everything if it's negative. If you like the guy, you'll believe it. If you don't like the guy, you won't believe it. Like for example, we've talked plenty of times. Like I'm not gonna go into him, but if you even look at like somebody like Keith Ellison, who a lot of people on the right don't like because he's a Muslim and he used to be the head of the DNC. Everybody was calling him, oh, he's abusive. He's this, and this, right? We've heard absolutely nothing about Keith Ellison. He hasn't even, unlike Michael Cohen or some of these other people in the Trump thing, there's no indictment, there's no pending investigation, but we'll label him, he's an abusive boyfriend, husband, whatever the case may be, because I'm gonna tell you why. Because we don't like him, right? That's the way it works. If you don't like him, you'll believe whatever it is people say about him without saying, okay, where's the evidence? You say, oh, well, there was evidence of a medical, and we go, and I'm not gonna sit here and talk about Keith Ellison. I'm not gonna defend Keith Ellison because I don't know him, nor do I have the will to. All I'm saying is our perceptions are always going to be based on whether or not you like somebody or not. You know what I mean? Like it's always going to be because everyone is biased. It just depends on how much they're willing to admit it. But I think when it comes to this Russia thing, it really makes our country look really, really dumb. And it makes people who talk about Russia and this whole collusion thing as being, they can talk about the investigation all they want to. But when you really start trying to convince people Like I heard on CNN the other day, they said the Russia investigation, it focused on black minorities, especially black people. That's CNN reporting this. And they said that the Russia investigation focused on black people because we've seen posts where they were talking about how your vote doesn't matter. Elections, all elections are rigged, things like that. So basically, all black people were just going to believe that. Then it's also the reason, and like I keep telling people, the main reason why I feel like we need to have more voter diversity, because you can't make a blanket statement like that, because the only reason why you can make a blanket statement like that is because you're saying all black people vote the same way. If all black people didn't vote the same way, or if the majority of black people didn't vote the same way, they can't make these type of statements to make us look stupid. They make us look real dumb because they're basically saying, oh, somebody came out and said, hey, look, man, don't vote for Hillary. She ain't cool. And everybody was just like, black people, everyone was like, all right, cool. I ain't gonna vote for Hillary because she ain't cool. Like it's insulting, but they can get away with it because we don't have any diversity in our voter base. We are basically a voting monolith right now. So that's the reason why they can get away with saying stuff like this, because if it was like 50-50, like they can't say the same thing about white people, right? Because white people are pretty much 50-50 conservative, 50-50 liberal, you know what I'm saying? Whatever else, sprinkle in whatever else you want to throw in besides that. They can't make a statement saying the Russians focused on, white people. Why can't they say it? Because they would be saying that all white people vote Democrat. They know that's not true, and they can't make that statement, or they can't say the majority of white people vote Democrat because it's not true. They are a split voter base. So, DJ, you got anything else, man? Any more questions, man? Because I'm about to wrap up the old Russian collusion thing tonight.
Yeah, there's a lot of information, but to be honest, it's like I'm not even interested in this whole investigation. Cause I know at the end of the day, that's just gonna come from it. Trump is not gonna get indicted, and this is all. It just feels like a show, basically. Like I'm watching a TV show.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna ask you a question, and this is what I always tell people, because it's like it's always good to to hype stuff up. But I ask you this question: how many U.S. presidents have ever went to jail?
None.
So, and then my question is, okay, we had Bill Clinton who lied under oath. We know he perjured himself, right? Didn't go to jail. We had Richard Nixon, who we know, basically you could say he had a conspiracy to defraud the American people, like literally, a literal conspiracy to defraud, and it was proven. And those guys who actually broke into Watergate, they went to jail. But did Richard Nixon go to jail? No. You can go back to Andrew Johnson, who was another president who was impeached. But he wasn't impeached in both houses, but he was impeached. He didn't go to jail for some of the awful things that he did, which if you go back and you research Andrew Johnson, you'll realize why I tell people, I don't care what you say, I don't care how you look at it. Andrew Johnson will always, in my opinion, be the worst president in U.S. history. If you don't know why, you need to do your research. Because Andrew Johnson is literally like, a lot of people say, oh, Barack, no. Go back and look at what Andrew Johnson was responsible to do. Look at what he did after Lincoln was assassinated, and you will understand why Andrew Johnson is by far the worst president in U.S. history. I don't care about Lyndon B. Johnson. I don't care about FDR. I don't care about Truman. Go back and look at Andrew Johnson, and he should be the worst president in everybody's mind. I don't even care about some of the presidents who were only in office for 6 or 7 days. I put them as being neutral because they didn't do anything. They didn't mess anything up. So go back to your history. Look at Andrew Johnson. Look at what he did as soon as Lincoln was assassinated. So, I think you're correct on that that statement there, BJ, because there's so much information out there. You can go and look at the actual indictments and look at what these people were actually convicted of. None of it really has anything to do with the original investigation. Yeah, these people committed crimes. I say they should go to jail. But the problem with this investigation, it keeps drawing on and on and on and on and on. Like, I'm just like, seriously, like to the point where if he's guilty of something, go ahead and bring your charges and then we'll handle it from there instead of all of this just talking about what if and what could be. Because all it's doing is it's just, you know, when people talk about what's dividing the country, we're divided on this because 50% are going to be like, this is a hoax, this is stupid, like me. The other 50% are going to say, well, he stole the election, he's Putin's, he's Putin's pet and all the rest. I've seen all the memes, we know. So it's just another situation where the longer this investigation goes and it's not bringing anything, there is still nothing like a conspiracy charge. Nobody has still been convicted of a conspiracy charge against the United States. And I'm still waiting on that to happen because you can't charge Donald Trump with collusion. So that's going to be the end of our show tonight, man. I hope y'all got some information tonight. Try to, my last couple of shows, because it's going to be the last show of the 2018 year, I will be taking, we're going to be taking next week off so you can spend time with your family and get out all this political stuff. So because next week will be Christmas Eve, I believe. So we're not going to have a show next Monday, but we will be back brand new 2019 for the first aftermath of 2019. I'm going to try to get a special guest on for that. So y'all be crossing your fingers. I'm going to try to get somebody. He's not going to be, I'm not going to say a celebrity, but I'm working on somebody who's, I don't want to say famous, but we'll just say you should know who he is. So I'm working on that right now. I'm going to try to keep plugging at him over the break. Hopefully I'll be able to get him. If I can't, hey, it'll just be me and BJ, and maybe we'll bring in some of the panel for 2019. I want to wish everybody a happy holidays, a happy New Year, Merry Christmas, Merry Kwanzaa, Merry Hanukkah, Happy Hanukkah. Why isn't that Merry Hanukkah? Anyway, happy. Happy Hanukkah. Yeah, why is it not Merry Kwanzaa? But Merry Hanukkah. It's even hard to say that. But anyway, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year from everybody at 50 Shades of Red and the Aftermath. I'm Saul G. BJ, you got anything you want to say on the last show of 2019, man? Oh, and we just want to say, man, we appreciate all the support. We've only been doing this for about a couple of months. So far, a lot of feedback has been positive. A lot of people, not kind of big on the right, have been very positive. They say they like what we're doing. We're going to continue doing what we're doing. Like I said, I'm going to work on getting this quote unquote big fish. Hopefully I might be able to get him on the show for about 15, 20 minutes of his time. And, I'm just going to put it like this. I'm going to try to put this on the shield, as we call it. So hopefully, he will kind of respect, he's an older member of my organization. So I'm going to try to see if he'll be willing to try to get, help a younger brother out. So we're going to see how it goes. But you got anything, BJ, you want to say?
Well, everybody have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
All right. And like I said, once again, it's been the Aftermath. You enjoy the rest of the year, and we'll see you in 2019.